Welcome to the Lean Practice Podcast. I'm Angus, joined with Aaron and Nathan, and the idea here is pretty simple. It's three of us just talking about the profession, what's working, what's not, and what's not being spoken about but probably should be. Between us, we've seen bullshit advice that's causing chiros to quit the profession by the time they're 40, and we'd like to just help put an end to that. We aren't really in this to tell you what to do, how to do it, or what the best playbook is. We're here to just show you what it actually looks like to build a practice around the life that you want, rather than the one someone else drew up for you. That's really it. Let's get into it.
Nate sent me a very interesting video this week, which we won't show, but we can go through the theory. So basically the theory of this was if you want to, is it 10 times your productivity and learn a skill instantly and be 10 times better at it, what you need to do is hire someone into that skill. Did I frame that right, Nate? That sounds about right?
That sounds basically, yeah. The crux was just, it seemed to me there wasn't even probably that pretense. It was just, you should hire a lot of people and do nothing.
Yes.
Other than maybe adjust people.
Which is sound advice if you have a $100 million company and you can afford to hire someone that actually has talent for $200,000. But the people that, yep.
Also, you've also mastered every skill set to hire somebody and understand if they're actually
that's the
doing
other
it
thing.
well
Yeah. So
as well.
yeah, if you don't know how to do it, how are you going to hire someone to do it? And then I think the advice was, well, there'd be people out there that already know how to do it. So it's like you get a marketing coordinator, not a social media manager. If you water that down to our businesses though, we probably don't have 6 figures to hire people that don't generate income. So we're getting, what's the average wage now? It's like 35 for a CA plus super. Yeah. I don't think you're getting marketing CEO type talent for that. You're competing against cafes for baristas who want to be social media managers. So again, just leaning back on the conversation last week or the week before, is the advice isn't wrong. The context is great.
Yeah, it's just wrong for
Wrong business, not enough zeros, probably just, and dangerous too. Because if you're like, oh, that's a great idea, and then you hire it out, you could easily lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
100%. If you get a social media manager, right? Let's say that they have no experience and then they get experience through your practice and then they actually do a phenomenal job. If they're good, you're not keeping them. They're going to outsource their own skill set to another practice or 5, and they're going to go and make bank because they learned a skill set. So there are no A players. If you get an A player marketer, they will become an agency. If you get an A player social media manager, they'll become a social media management agency. There is no A plus talent in this. It just doesn't exist. Like, it's the most ridiculous hire that you can get because it's so easy to flip it. I have a skill that you require because you didn't learn it. So I'm going to go and monetize that skill because you and the rest of the profession fails to learn it, and will outsource it because of that advice. Because if the advice is delegation, well, then you're a slave to social media managers and worse, agencies, because you're constantly looking to not own the skill set.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like a good associate too. When you get those ones that are banging, they're going to leave. They're going to start their own practice eventually. Social media managers just have a shorter lifespan, I'd say. We did this with someone, Aaron. We were like, be careful. If we teach them this, they're going to leave. 4 months, 6 months, maybe gone.
Yep.
And probably getting paid twice as much somewhere else.
Yep.
That was literally the comment. Was like, I can't compete with what she got offered. Yeah. Like you allowed them to develop, but now you got to go back and start again. And did you learn anything in the process? In this case, no, they did not.
Probably not. I mean, also, even just if you could use that advice in practice, and I have definitely succumbed to this idea. The whole point, as we discussed on another episode, was if you delegate, it's to allow you to work more. Yet most people delegate to work less. So you're not actually replacing that whole idea that you have a skill that's worth, say, $500 an hour. So someone going in for $100 an hour, you're profitable. Yeah, but you have to go do those hours in the practice. And most people are like, oh, now I don't have to do it. I'm going to take more days off. So you've got a new cost and you're working less, which is dandy, but it don't work out at all.
No. And you're right. It is a new cost. A lot of what I found, well, outside of a chiro, everything is an expense. There's no other revenue generating people in the business. And you can argue that, yes, it's like the leverage of being able to do more. But then if you use that time that you just got back to take a day off, you're not leveraging that extra time. Yeah. Anyway, so this sort of leads me into the topic of this week, which is really the only piece of advice that I'm seeing for chiros is to increase their lifetime value. So that means what you sell more of it. That's the only way you're ever going to be successful in business. I truly believe that there is a whole list, which we're going to go through, of reasons why this won't work, from like reputation, philosophy. I suppose you could throw that one out there. And even just like your own lifestyle, where, it's like it is sound advice, but is it going to work? It doesn't work for everyone. And why doesn't it work for everyone? I think it's because chiros are individuals. And there doesn't seem to be any other advice around, well, this is how you set your model and how you market it properly. We can't all play the same game. But if you don't even know what the product is that you sell, how are you supposed to sell it? That's pretty much the point here. So increasing the lifetime value basically just means do more of what you do. The secondary point to that is we need to shorten the appointments to increase the capacity. Then when you've got an increased capacity, if you hit your capacity, outsource, get an associate, then you've got more capacity again. Why, Aaron, if we can just start from like a high level business sense, not in a service-based industry that requires hands-on care, increasing lifetime value, can you just give us like the theory, why it's the advice, and when it works in a certain situation, just so that we can get an understanding of it?
So the LTV is literally how much value do you get per purchase, right? So, or per customer, I should say, not per purchase. So if customer A buys 10 times on a $100 product, your LTV is 1,000. Now, what that means is that if you want to quote unquote scale, you have to know what your average LTV is. So, because everything else is cost, right? So you got your cost of fulfillment, cost of goods, then you have cost of your marketing, and maybe some other things. So knowing your LTV allows you to get a predictive margin, allows you then to start putting rules in for the additional costs. When you know your margin, you know your scale numbers, and then the business should operate off of very clear ratios so that your profit is not impacted by cost. All right, so I don't want to lower my margin while I scale. And if I do, it has to be at such incremental values that it's not really impacting us. Like the additional volume that we get in new customers should give us more profit just because we've got more volume coming in, right? Because it's like chiropractic. If you have a product, there's a tipping point where volume starts to exceed the cost, and your costs, if they remain fixed, you can now exponentially increase your profit. So that's the same in most, I'll even say all businesses. And so now you've got your rules that you can play this game from, but you have to know what that LTV is. Now, in the case where I have a $300 LTV and I have a $200 marketing expense and a $100 cost of fulfillment, I'm sitting at break even. And so if I try to scale and I get 100 more people on, I'm scaling nothing, right? Like you're scaling zero. And so at that point, the advice is you should consider increasing either your average cart value at purchase. You should consider increasing your 30-day cash value, right? So that's with upsells, or you should consider increasing your LTV, which the first two increase LTV. But then if you look at LTV, you are looking at repeat purchase, right? How many times can I get somebody to continue to purchase that same product or service? And so there are certain times where your business requires you to increase the lifetime value, and chiropractic is one of those services
that can be
require that.
done in price rise is obviously the first one. Second one is frequency,
Correct.
like visit frequency, and then additional
Correct.
services and products,
Yeah.
pillows, all that sort of stuff. So if we were to look at this, I know Hormoz is a good example because you know his story very well. When he was working with gyms, he did the launch thing, but then he moved into like a supplement line, which essentially was like him solving another problem that his current clients had. But that again is increasing lifetime value because then they use that service as well. So it's like he got more out of the same. So cool. That makes sense. In terms of chiropractors, what I'm seeing is it's just do more visits. That's it. That seems to be, increase the price, yes, but do more visits. Don't necessarily add more value. The value is the visits from the things that I've been around. I know you've built a couple of practices, spoken to a lot of other people, been to seminars, changed your own way of helping people internally. When you're increasing visits, what's the inside the practice looking like? How do the patients respond? What are you noticing when you do follow this advice?
Yeah, listen, I think it depends where you're coming from, right? Because there's different levels. Obviously, we know within all health services, under-servicing is probably the biggest issue, right? So the advice to add more visits can be a tangible thing based in best evidence, best outcomes, and is usually adhered to really well because the staff are really on board, within reason, of course. I've always got to drop that air quote in there, within reason. And the thing that's probably key here is in terms of patients, it's only new patients that are generally being affected. You don't take your patient you've been seeing on maintenance on the monthly and suddenly be like, hey, we're going to bring you back to twice a week because I've seen this new thing and we didn't do it at the start, so we're going to do this now, right? That's nonsensical. And it's also an acknowledgement of different response times. But let's say, your standard had been twice a week for 4 weeks and suddenly you're going twice a week for 12 weeks, right? Obviously, there's always going to be an initial phase of uncertainty because certainty is built around, it's kind of like evidence, right? Sack and Strayer. What does the research tell us? What does patient feedback? And then what is our own experience? And so if you've not experienced running that frequency, it's the same reason a good colleague of mine, Dr. Craig Foote, talks about that, like if you're in the student clinic and you only ever could see someone twice a week, your odds of you seeing someone more than twice a week in practice is very low because you have no experience of it, right? So obviously increasing frequency is fine within reason. The problem is if you've come from a model where you're used to doing, say, twice a week for 4 weeks, and then maybe weekly for a couple of weeks now, and then you're like 3 times a week for 12 weeks, and then we're going to bring it down to twice a week and then it just, one, it doesn't make sense. Not to say that 3 times a week isn't appropriate at time there, but like that consistent just on, I mean, that's a model just trying to milk visits, right? There's good research, a very like a regular high volume care plan in the right state, but not as a standard. And so you're going to feel incongruent with it. And that's going to come up. Patients feel the energy, right? I know when my patient base dips, it's usually because, let's be honest, because my kids aren't sleeping and I'm not sleeping, or I've got a bunch of other things that I'm managing outside the practice and I'm subconsciously bringing that into the practice. And so when you are not congruent with the words you're saying, people are going to feel that. And so you'll know very quickly whether it's something that you're just having to get used to, and then you start seeing great results and you're like, actually, this is correct, this is the thing, or whether you're just fighting a losing battle because your practice is slowly sinking and you're trying to be like, well, everyone just said if I just see people more, I'll get more profit out of it, right? The problem is then you almost get no reactivations because people don't want to come back in because they know they're going to have to go through that again, which I think we discussed on another call, on another podcast. And then you just get a bit of stink around you, right? Like we are a reputation-based industry that's not always had the great reputation, right? I was chatting with one, I've got two anaesthetists and a surgeon I'm looking after at the moment, amongst the gamut of medical professionals that I do take care of. And I like to play with them. I was like, why haven't you seen chiropractic before? I just didn't know what was going on, right? I didn't know what's going on. And then one of my colleagues, another surgeon I looked after, recommended it, and we went, all right, let's give it a whirl. So we are a reputation referral-based industry as a primary, and I think we've forgotten that. And what tends to happen is you go all in, and no offense to my digital marketing buddies right in front of me on this call, but when you tend to go digital, you tend to forget about the internal. And so you're not doing your internal referrals, you're doing all those things, and you're so focused on transactional initiations rather than relationships. And so you don't have that opening. And then on top of that, you eventually just get to a point where you have to like, all right, now I need high volume, I need even higher pricing, and yet you're still not seeing return on it in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And it turns into that cycle, right? I need 100 leads a week. I need 200 leads. And it's like, well, we're so obsessed with this lifetime value, getting the sale up front. You're not building that base that we spoke about last week. And you've jumped on this rat race. If you looked back at your patient list from 12 months ago, would there be anyone the same from then to now? And the funny thing is, half the practices call themselves wellness-based practices, and they've got no one in wellness care. So it's like, what's going on? So I think the advice is, again, it's like sound advice that makes sense mathematically. When you pull that into what we do and you're actually like, okay, well, can I just triple my visits? Sure. But it might not be authentic. And I think there needs to be space for that to be an okay thing as well, because unfortunately, a lot of the lifetime value has to increase, as Aaron said, but it's the marketing activities that you're doing, the digital marketing, Facebook, Google, all these things, very expensive game. So if you do have a high lifetime value, that probably gives you a ticket into playing those games. If you don't though, and you're totally okay with doing less, which is fine because that's what you authentically believe in, then you may need to look at other alternatives, which is where I think you're going there, Nath, with the corporate talks and the in-person stuff. You just have to know your model to then be able to market to your game. You got a $300 product, you're spending $200 on marketing, that's probably a little high. Maybe you're playing the wrong game in that instance.
Yeah, I think at that point there as well, your resource for marketing changes. So it's like if my LTV is low and I'm happy there, it's fine. But I cannot spend money to acquire new patients. I have to spend time to acquire those new patients. And so, like you said, the model has to match the game that you're specifically playing. And then, it all comes with rules. I feel like that's what goes out of the window is like no one's defined what the rules are for each game. So if you want to play high volume, go on Facebook, you also have to play a very high volume calling game. Your CAs are going to have to call, or your DCs are going to have to call. Like the rules change with that. So it's not even just a financial thing. It's like our internal operations is going to change as well, which is obviously going to put more stress on how we operate, which is going to make you feel a certain way. And now if you oppose that model, it's going to make you feel even worse. And so you do have to match the rules of the model
Yeah,
and the game
and
that
it's a
you're playing.
good point you bring up because within the last month, we've had probably some tough conversations. I've had some tough conversations with our marketing clients after getting their data and seeing it. And probably for the first time, any agency has just said, look, mate, you can't play this game. Your model doesn't support it. Basically, like the short numbers are if you don't have a lifetime value of $2,000, you don't qualify to pay someone to do that for you. On the flip side of that, you can probably run them yourself. So again, there's that time or money thing. Awesome. Learn. Yeah,
Delegate? Yeah. Do you delegate or do
exactly.
you learn
And
it
like as
yourself?
much as that sounds like a choice, for some people it's not. If you've got a good mate, started his own practice, look, you cannot afford to outsource this. You have to learn it. And he did, and now he's doing fine. So Facebook ads works, and I know this is just one example. It works, but it's like the way you play the game is dependent on your model, and you need to really understand that. Ultimately, the model is what's your lifetime value. That's really it. So I just want to touch slightly, Nathan, on the inauthenticity, because I've had a lot of time, I think, around this, teaching associates the model that we were running in my previous company. I'd have to sit down, go through all the conversion rates with them, go through the report of findings, teach them all these things, go through all the scripts. Then I'd get all their data at the end of each month, sit down together, go through it together. I could see very obvious patterns when someone was inauthentically doing what we were teaching them. Ironically enough, when I came out and started with PracDev, it was the same thing in the businesses. The only difference here is that when you're running your own business, you don't have a 100K wage coming in, every week. You literally are on your own. So the typical things that I saw were actually a decent conversion rate, which was interesting because they knew that they weren't going to get the person through the 36 visits anyway, so it didn't matter. That they were selling something knowing that they weren't going to make the full and have to sit down and go through the comparison results because they'd never get there anyway. So conversion rates were pretty high, 60 to 80% most of the time. Their growth never occurred. They never get past 100 visits. They really get stuck between 100, 120, and then they drop back down to say 80. And what was happening there was because they were converting so many people, it didn't make sense, right? It's like you've added so many visits, yet you've not grown. And it was the back end of, call it whatever you want, retention, whatever, they knowing that they weren't going to get those people through, their active patient base wasn't growing. That's really where this whole stability idea came from. So interestingly, it can look like your associate's doing pretty well in terms of conversions, but if you don't go to that next stage and look at active growth, you end up with an associate who's just, again, if you're spending money on marketing, you're paying them to maintain exactly where they're at. You're not getting any other return on that. That's just been from my experience. Nate, from yours, what have you seen when you see someone, not even an associate, maybe people you've worked with in the past in different capacities? What does inauthenticity look like?
Because I think you've hit the nail on the head there with they're good at getting people started, often with the idea knowing that they'll have to hold no level of accountability for the results. We see this in all sorts of health industries, particularly ones that can take, was in hospitals. I think a few people know the ones I'm talking about. But the point is, this burnout in practice is the key sign of this, right? There's a really fantastic book that I recommend to almost everyone. It's very simple. It's called The Giant Leap by Gay Hendricks. It's basically just this concept of how do you know if you're in your zone of greatness? And to really break it down, the simplicity is most people, I'm not even really call it, maybe it's the zone of bad. I'm going to call it the zone of shit. When you're in your shit, you'll do anything to get out of there. You'll actually work a full-time hours. Praise be. I'm hear Aaron saying right now. A chiropractor that actually works 5-6 days a week. Actually put the effort in. You'll do the screens, you do the marketing, you're making the calls, right? And then you get into the zone of good. You're seeing it, you're making some money. I don't really want to spend my weekend doing that. And the thing is, the zone of good's interesting because from the outside, things seem fine. Yet the key marker between the difference of things being good and great is that you don't feel fulfilled, right? You're this busy practice. This could be an owner or an associate. Everyone else is telling you how good it looks. and you're like, I am not having a good time. And can be, your setup's wrong, your niche is wrong, everything about it is not right. And this is where people start burning out. And this is a lot of the people I've spoken to or worked with. They're like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, because they haven't perceived the idea that they're doing, they're running someone else's practice, not their own, right? Even if you're an owner, you're still running someone else's model. And it's just not feasible. But in your mind, they were successful, and they're quoting again. So they must know, and this is the only way to do it, which we just know is absolutely false, right? So that is the biggest thing I see, is just that constant uncertainty and burnout. And we naturally all play the game of keeping up with the Joneses. So everyone's like, well, that person looks like they're doing really well. They're doing well. And I had something the other day. I was like, oh, did you see this person? They're absolutely crushing it. They're fully booked out. And I was like, yeah, they are. But in their model, they see 30 people a week. So getting booked out isn't actually that big a challenge. And there's no shade on that at all, right? They're charging a premium price. They're getting what they need. All power to it. But if you're going to compare your model, where you're a more volume-based model, to their low-volume model, it doesn't compare. In reality, you might be making more, if that's your primary goal, than they are. They're just happy with the way they're doing it. I think the other thing that doesn't get talked enough, and we sort of mentioned at the start, is the ability to deliver value. I think chiropractors, bar any allied health practitioner or practitioner, are great when it comes to building a client book. I know multiple coaches, a lot of people have said, and they've got multidisciplinary practices, but nobody can build like chiropractors. And it's because we were marginalized for a long time, and we had to succeed. We weren't supported by health cover and all these things. And yet here we are. Whereas a lot of industries are just in bed with a lot of government programs, no shade on it, but it's not hard to get referrals and just live off that. And most of those referrals aren't required for the truth of it. The hardest people to get results for are often work covers and stuff like that, because most of them don't want to go back to work because they hate work. Most people don't like work. Can you deliver on the value? So chiropractors tend to be very good at getting people in, explaining the value, and they're not really delivering it, right? Like you said before, they've all these wellness practices, but no one on wellness, because they don't actually know how to explain delivery of value on wellness. And I have a phrase that I've used countless times with people. It's like, when I am in my practice and I see a new patient, whether it is true or not, I assume that I will help them for the rest of their life, because I know I have the ability to do that. I know that every time they come in, I can deliver a level of value that continues to move them forward. I'm certain in that. I've done extra training for it, and sometimes people just want to park and be happy, and all they want is the manual skills. Sometimes they want me to redo their programming. Sometimes they just need a discussion for what's above the atlas, right? But you build that skill. When you look at someone, be like, I can probably work with someone with 6 visits. That's a coaching issue, right? You need to actually figure yourself out what you're doing. And this is, when I used to work with my physio mates, my osteo mates, I was the same for them. Whether you think you're going, whether that person wants to work with you forever, you should at least have the capacity to do it. And I've always argued that it's almost negligent to take a patient on if you don't think you can. But that's where I think it ends up, right? You end up with these people that don't like practice. They're just dying to get out of there, but they've got a degree that doesn't really lead anywhere else. And they don't know what to do. And so they start looking for other pathways.
Yeah, and this leads perfectly into my next topic, which Aaron will unmute himself for, which is that idea of getting the 3-day week, getting out of the practice. Aaron, just go, mate. I'm not even going to do an introduction.
All right, man. If the claim was I can help heal people with my hands, why is the first thing that I do when I'm successful stop that action?
Yeah.
I don't get it. I just don't get it, man. I think philosophically it makes no sense to me. I was a personal trainer for a long time, for 14 years. I like to get people fit and healthy. I like to get myself strong, and so I like to train. The thing is I didn't really like helping overweight people who'd never trained before get strong. So I felt a little bit of burnout, wanted to leave the industry because that was my niche for a very, very, very long time. I think people want to leave because they don't like what they're doing. That's my natural conclusion, right? It's like you want to leave because you don't like to do it. But it just doesn't make sense that you come into this industry, you're super passionate, and the first thing that you want to do is you want to leave once you get successful. You put in associates, and the first thing you do, literally the first action is you take off days, and then you hope that the business works. So for me, philosophically, it doesn't make sense. Like if I'm employed typically to boost your practice through new patient efforts, and half the book gets closed as soon as an associate comes on board. I've never been able to make sense of it, and it doesn't translate either. It's like, again, I'm not saying the claim is I can heal people with my hands, but I'm going to use that as a hyperbole. If that's what I could do, why aren't I posting on social media? Why am I not everywhere? It's like saying I got the cure to cancer and not having a marketing plan to get that out there. It's like the claims and the actions don't make sense. And I think that is magnetized or it's highlighted more so when people want to leave the practice and
Yeah.
they call that
Yeah.
success.
Yeah.
That's my
No,
take
no, I think
from an
I
external.
100% agree. And I think there's a nuance which we've made the mistake of talking about as well in the past when we first started Pracdev of like building the lifestyle business, a 3.5 day practice, that sort of stuff. As I've matured, I think I've reevaluated what I think a lifestyle practice is, which when I was in practice again, not practicing the way I wanted to, it was like I'm gassed. Like at the end of every week, I was gassed. So then it was like, oh, well, if it is attractive to get down to 3 days a week, 4 days a week was kind of the deal back then. Now, what I've learned is it's actually wanting to be there every single day. That's what the lifestyle practice is, and building your life into what you're doing. Now, I'm not saying work 7 days a week like a madman. What I'm saying is it feels like when someone says, I want to drop back hours, it's out of like necessity. It's like they desperately need to get out of that place because they hate it there. As you said, it's not what they want to do. It's not where they want to be. Unfortunately, our degree is very specific to one thing. The good news is you can do it very different ways. But I don't think anyone's realizing that and realizing that there's different models and different ways to be successful. 30 visits a week, charging 3 times more compared to 200 visits a week, probably charging a bit less, at the end of the day can probably balance out to be pretty similar. So actually having, the confidence to be like, all right, well, what do I actually want to do so that you actually want to be there all the time? Build a lifestyle business that actually means you like your job, you like your patients, you get to talk a bit of shit, talk about the footy. Or if you want to go that route of high volume, then do it. But the success marker isn't how many days off you get to have. It's how fulfilled you get to be, like you said before, Nate. It's like, how do you feel at the end of the week when you're ready to go again on Monday? Are you getting, my mate used to call them what are they? Sunday scaries or something. That's what the kids call it. It's like if you're regretting going to work on Monday, you're probably doing it the wrong way. That's a pretty good little test for yourself. When you touched on this already, when you're looking at someone who's it's like they do the double blow, hire an agency, hire an associate, they then piss off for a Friday or a Thursday or whatever. What's like I just want to get into the mindset of the owner here, because I think we've spoken about it in the past where it's like it's a desperate hire, then it's like a desperate marketing effort. As like an external consultant, what are you seeing in there? What are they hoping for? What's going through their head? Just objectively, what the hell's going on? And how can we pick up warning signs if that was us doing it at that moment?
I think it comes back to what we started this with. The advice is scale through delegation, right? And so there's a belief that I got early on with fitness. So when I was exchanging time one-on-one or even with groups, there's a lot of energy. I started digital marketing and I started a digital product. And then I was like, oh, there's a shift here. This is nice. And so I figured I could save energy and time by going in a different direction. And effectively, my source of delegation was like I could market through Facebook. That was the new shiny object at the time, and that was my delegation tactic, right? It's like get my marketing to this automated machine that could go out. The problem is like it just doesn't work. And so when I find somebody in that situation, they've believed something that is an escape mechanism for where they're actually at. So they come in and they're like, oh, I believe in scale and delegation as an escape for me, so I don't have to burn out anymore because I'm burnt out, I'm fried, I'm cooked. So if I can duplicate myself through systems and people and marketing, then I can scale my way out of practice and I can go and do something that gives me energy rather than takes it. I think that's where it comes from, because like we're human, dude. Like the exchange of energy is hard.
Emotionally tolling, yeah.
It's hard, man. 100%. So like I get that, except you're trying to do something that is not inside of the model's rules, right? Or you're not willing to come to the table, because it's like if you come to me with that subset, the very first thing that we need is intensity, right? Because you're about to learn something that you've never learned before. You're about to create content which you haven't done before. You're about to do all of this social media stuff that you've never done. You're going to jump on phone calls with people that are low quality leads. You're about to do all of this work that you haven't done before, but what you're wanting is not that immediate dive. And so it's like there's a there's a like a dissonance between their want and reality. And it's like, no, bro, this is going to actually probably kill you first. And you get to scale later after you've acquired all of the skill sets relative to being able to then
Yeah.
now step out of the practice. And like we mentioned last week, it's like you come to a marketing agency, you haven't got those skills, you're about to go
Yeah.
through the valley of
Yeah.
despair.
And the valley of despair, like the only way I
Yeah,
sort of got my way through it is to enjoy the process of learning. Like when you're getting busier, that's like a good thing. Systematize what you can, but then it's like, okay, now you want to take on marketing. You don't know how to make content, emails, follow-ups. You don't know any of this stuff. So it's an opportunity to learn, which is, I think, is the only way to get through it. Because the ones who are the most distant during this time period always fail. There's never people who, like, they send us their CA,
100%.
their social media manager to deal with. Well, not deal with, like that's who is the primary communicator with us. Never works ever.
Never, never, dude. And that person learns the skill and
Yeah,
then they
and then
piss
they
off out of the
leave.
practice.
And it's just like the only way
Yeah.
out is you got to get in and learn it. And the only way to get in and learn it is you got to learn how to enjoy that process. You know, you've made that decision that you're now going to go and acquire those skills, because honestly, you can't afford to hire Aaron full time on a wage in your practice. You just can't as a marketing director. That's just the reality, to be frank. So Nath, I want to completely flip sort of the idea here now, because you've spoken to a few old heads, died at the table. They fucking love it. What's the difference now between the guys who are younger, let's say people who are 40 and under, who now have their own practice, who are actively trying to get out of this thing and take more time off and let the business run there for them, compared to these old dudes who are literally just like, I am going to do a prone thoracic and I'm going to die on top of this patient. That's how it's going to go.
It's a good question, right? I've spent a lot of time with some great mentors. Classic one be Ken Vag. I had the joy of seeing Dr. Douglas Heron the other night, who's a former coach from Powerful Practices over in WA. Would know Doug. He used to do the big dynamic growth conferences. He always used to go do the wind up, and he would tell you his learnings from all the different people. And they got him out of retirement for a communication night the other night. He is still like as passionate as you've ever seen. There were tears, there were excitement, there was spittle. We were going off. I'd missed it. But I think it comes a lot from, one, the programs. So I think as things have evolved and there's some great things going on, but I think everyone who came through the chiropractic program had come from a chiropractor, had seen a chiropractor, had a great experience, had always seen chiropractors, and it was a natural part. And they had saw chiropractors, that the stories of your Gonsteads. So they used to talk about, he used to work 6 days a week and then do house calls Saturday nights and Sundays, right? That's what they did because they loved it. He'd be asleep in the, like, I don't know if it was a horse-drawn cart or the car in the back in between patients. And that's how he got his energy. And then he just keep going. People loved it. And just, they saw the changes. They had such a joy with it. Because now, like, when you go to the unis, sometimes you'll see, I would hazard a guess that 20 to 30% of fifth years, maybe more, have never seen a chiropractor. And most of them have never even seen a student chiropractor. The only adjusting experience they have is being adjusted by each other in labs. And that's it. And so it's just become a tool rather than a passion. I think there's been a big shift in mindset. So not that it's a negative. I think it's great that the generation coming through, I would say I'm loosely part of that generation, but probably younger again, still sub 40 just. But this is a generation that super value time outside of work. Like, it's their highest value. And it's because they're all keeping up the Joneses on social media and their laptop lifestyling, right? And so they're all trying to figure that side of things out. They just don't have the joy in it. And I do think the irony with all the change, all the adaptation, I think the old lads usually got better results. I think they had better skills. They worked at the skills. They followed processes. They used a less is more approach, and they were not afraid to ethically have a go with something. Doug told a story about a young kid that this kid's mum brought in, 8 years old, had never physically been to the toilet since being a baby without a suppository, learning difficulties, all these things. And, said, I don't know if I can help. I'll adjusted them. Kid, starts pooping. But then kid can start going and socializing, can do better. Like, they saw these huge things. And I think if you had a mum go to most chiropractors these days, hey, I've got a kid that's going this on, most of them be like, no, I can't help with that. But I'm shocked by the amount of new patients I get where they're like, I've seen a chiropractor and they told me they can't help me. And then I look at it and I'm like, this is a standard low back pain issue, let alone something weird. This is bread and butter. What do you mean they said they can't help? Are they like, oh, they adjusted me like once and then they were like, no, I don't think I can help you. I was like, do they just not like you? What's going on? So I don't know. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of answers. And there's some great new grads or new practitioners in the last few years that are absolutely thriving. loving it. They're finding their own niches. They're doing their own thing. And I think that is testament to people that almost all of them had always seen chiropractors. It had always been part of their life. I've met students that have chronic back pain and have never seen a chiropractor. I was like, you're literally training to be one. What do you mean? What are you doing? What's been lost? And so I think in the effort to change so many things, there's lost the core of it, the joy of it. And I do think there was a culture where, and listen, whether you agree or not agree, this is not a statement on things, but I saw something the other day that used to be the idea that for men particularly, and again, male, female, I'm to opportunity out here. If we look at 60s, 70s, 80s, men worked very hard because you're in a position where if your wife didn't want to work, she didn't have to. You could afford to buy a house and do all these things. But men worked a lot of really physical, hard jobs they didn't love, but they loved the opportunity it gave them for their families, right? And I think women, it was probably the same. Like a single mother could support a family and earn a good wage, whether it was the best or not. Now, both parents got to be working. It almost feels like it's a constant drain. It feels every time you push harder, something undercuts it, right? I don't think there's the same joy. And then my final thing on this, and this is probably the thing that concerns me the most, is people are really bad with feedback. Like so poor with feedback. Students don't want feedback on their adjusting. They don't want to hear negative feedback from patients. So like you said, they schedule in a way they know they're never going to have to go through it. They don't do check-ins. They don't do re-exams. When they come to talk to you about their business, they're like, no, it's profitable. It's going well. And you're like, that can't be true. We're both
literally have
looking
no
at this.
money. Yeah.
Like what you're coming to talk to me, which means it's not okay. Don't what's there's a Ricky Gervais joke where he talks about being on Celebrity Fit Fat or something. It was like Celebrity Weight Watchers type thing. And one of the massive guys gets on the scale and he looks down. They're like, you're 150 kilos. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And Ricky's like, what do you mean you can't believe it? What did you think? You're just wearing a bunch of fat pads and you just, whoops, I'll just take those off. Like it's like we're denying ourselves the very truth. And so we're not willing to take feedback. And one of my favorite things that was trained to me and taught to me by a number of great mentors is the bounce. And the bounce being, when you're growing in practice, you hit the bounce. And the bounce is an energy to tell you that something's going on. So often the bounce happens, the classic 60 a week, 100 a week in a slightly more volume process, or it might be time. Like you used to go 2 across 15 or 2 across 20. Now you're going 3 across, you're testing it out. And you have these couple of moments where you bounce, where like you fall behind or you feel a bit burnt out and you're not certain. The thing is the bounce is information. It's like an injury is just information. It's information to tell you that something's happening here and you either need to lean in and push through, or it's a true barrier and you need to reevaluate how you do things in practice and change. And I've had to do that. My patients say this. For a long time, I saw 3 across 15 as a standard. I actually consider myself pretty slow because I know a lot of practitioners who go a lot faster. And then when I had my second child, I kept bouncing and I was just like, no, I don't have the capacity right now. And so I dropped to what I call a 3-2. I do 3, then 2, 3, then 2. And then when I came back from my injury, I went back to 2 and 2 because, again, my capacity wasn't there. And now I'm at a point where I could pretty much, if I want to, I can be 3s. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. My book is open to do it, but I don't force it. But it was all from the listening to the bounce and being like, all right, I'm now happy here. And then I hit a point where I was like, let's test it again to see if I can deliver more care better for people. And I tested it and I had the capacity again. And so if you don't listen to the bounce, like most people that get stuck at 50 a week, it's not like they can't do 60. It's not like they can't do 100. They just have to move something above the atlas and embrace the bounce and see what they're doing. And then they bounce through and they start enjoying practice again. And so if you can't take feedback, whether it's your own personal feedback or feedback from those around you, then you will never be able to get through the bounce.
Yeah. What he means by adjust above the atlas, by the way, Aaron, is your mindset. Took me way too long to put that together. Did you know what he was talking about?
I figured he pointed to his head.
This is a audio. I don't know what you call this. You're hearing here. Everyone doesn't have their sense. Anyway, let's move on. So I only want to spend 5 minutes on this because I just do not care for it enough. The philosophy that people have. Okay. I think my opinion, because I see all these philosophy seminars and I see the same people going to the same philosophy seminar every year. And it's like, why do you need to keep going back to the same philosophy seminar? Where you draw your philosophy from, I think, comes from how you operate, the problem you solve, how you help people. That's kind of my framework. So an example I've used before is like a mechanic gets passionate about the kind of cars he works on, not being a mechanic. So if you're a mechanic and you wanted to specialize in 4-wheel drives, you get passionate about 4-wheel drives. You don't go to the Ford factory, start frothing out over engine cylinders. It's like, I care more about the 4-wheel drive. Or if you're into European luxury cars, then you're into European luxury cars. at any point in your career, you might also change. You have these changes in your life. So I think it's actually the problem that you're solving and the people that you're helping is where your philosophy comes from. And when people are constantly like on this philosophy train, I might get stabbed for saying this. I can see it in your eyes, Nath. But when people are on this philosophy train, they're constantly needing to top it up. It's like, I think they're drawing it from the wrong place. And they struggle to talk about what they do. Like so many people come to me for personal branding advice, then all they talk about is chiropractic. And it's like, no, you need to talk about the problem you solve. And as soon as you do that, you'll be fine. So I feel like they're drawing their philosophy from the job and not the way they help people and the problem that they solve. And I think that's a big internal issue that people have, because then they can't work out how they want to help people. They don't know what they're selling. They don't know what their lifetime value is. They just think that's it, be all and end all. You are more than welcome to have an opposite opinion on this. But that, I think as well, like leaning back into, you saying that students are coming in without seeing a chiro before, or, you feel like the people coming through now don't have that passion. I think back in the day, the passion was they just loved fucking helping people. That was the thing. In the world of niches and is it niche, whatever, you have to specialize in something to get your passion from that. Now you can't just blatantly help people because it's not good enough in this day and age, and we're forced into targeting a problem and a person. And I think that's where you get your passion from, and that's how you stay in the game longer and be these guys in 50 years time that are still passionate about doing the job that they're doing. They're not trying to get away from that, because like I've got a big passion now of helping chiros find their message, be authentic, enjoy their work, make good money. I fucking love that. Someone messaged me on a Sunday, I'm going to message them back. If I just did paid ads and someone messaged me on a Sunday, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to deal with that, because it's not the thing that I'm overly passionate about. It's a part of it, but it's not the whole thing. That's my 2 cents. Nath, where do you stand on this? Keep it short.
And that is definitely not going to happen. We're going to have our first argument. No, I see where you're coming from, but I do not agree, because I think we're conflating marketing.
Right, we'll end the episode there. That's we're sweet. Good to have you.
I think not in a wrong way. I think I agree with a lot of it, but I think we're conflating marketing and social economics and like processes with an internal drive and philosophy. Because just because you have and it's definitely niche. If anyone says niche, I want to knife you. And I'm sure someone in the comments is going to be like, well, that's how you say it. Fuck off. But the point is, and sorry, Angus's mum, if you're listening for the swearing, the core of
Kathy.
this... Kathy.
She's listening, mate. She's the only one.
Yeah, she is. Listen, as long as Kathy's listening, we're getting the job done. Now, the point being here, the whole philosophy is an internal thing, right? Now, we all have a philosophy around healing, about what we want to do, but if you try and take an internal philosophy and then turn it into just, these are the people I help and this is my marketing statement of that, I think that's where it gets lost, because you are pigeonholing and isolating a little bit. Like, I think philosophy has also had that issue because it's been pigeonholed into a thing, whereas it's a internal understanding of how you act and do things and how you bring yourself and show yourself to the world. And chiropractic's had a strong philosophy, for better or worse in many ways. I think probably for overall better. I think it's what's helped the industry stay to what it is for a long time. I think it's had trouble converting into the social media or digital age and being able to explain it. Absolutely. But I think like it's such an integral understanding, because why you do something is like why you do it. Like, it's who you are. It's your lived experiences. And then we all put it into this thing called chiropractic. And that's why there is so much variation within it, because we are not hamstrung to one ideology. I think when it comes to your bigger philosophy, like seminars, I were big on them. I went through phases where I think my biggest critique is what you said before. There's a history of, you'll see seminars, it's just the same people speaking every time. And that gets a bit like, I've heard this, right? But the point of a lot of these, I used to make this joke, and forgive me for our religious people, I mean this with all love, but I used to say that a lot of these seminars like the Hillsong Church of Chiropractic, because you get up there and everyone's out waving their hands and singing and dancing, which sounds woo-woo, and I get it. But the one thing we know about our industry is that on any given Tuesday, I can have 10 people in my comments tell me I'm a piece of shit and I kill people, right? Just because that's the fun. And every so often, it's nice to be in a room of other people doing the thing, seeing great results, enjoying it, and just being like, you know what, we're good. And you're like, I'm quite happy to pay money and go hang out in a good energy. And most of what I learned from philosophy studies seminars is, well, when I was drinking, it was in the bar after, hanging out with people. But, I can still tell you, I went to Concordia 2025, and my favorite that entire weekend was in the philosophy stream, John Thornhill from LifeWest University. And it was a discussion around the core principles on, and bear with me, people, stay here, in the idea that the universal intelligence is not God. because there's a common fight within religion and the idea of the universal intelligence above innate intelligence in core chiropractic philosophy. And that is not a God, because that violates a lot of other tenets. And it had nothing to do with how I practice. It had nothing to do. It was just a really fun and glorious conversation. And that's, I think, what people miss with philosophy is it's a really fun way of looking at things and understanding ideas rather than a hardline diatribe, which is what we've turned it into. And so I think you have a philosophy in your practice. My philosophy in my practice is that taking care of yourself is fun. And when I have seen the practice not be where it needs to be, it's because I have gone away from that philosophy. And so it's not about the people. Anybody, if you want to have fun while you're taking care of yourself, I'm the practice for you. Old, young, all those things, right? It is the practice for you. We had a patient yesterday bring young Ed a glorious bottle of wine, which is apparently a $100 bottle of wine, but he's getting it for 25 because he's got a guy, which is going to ruin Ed for life now because he's going to get one, and a decanter because Ed doesn't own a decanter because he's 26. And like, he's just like, hey,
Because Ed's not
like,
classy.
hey.
That's why.
He's just, here's thanks for the health. Here's a bottle of red and a decanter for being a lad. We can have some fun here, right? And that's part of the philosophy. We don't have to be this holier now saints. We don't have to be above, down, inside out. It can be what you want it to be, but every so often getting dipped in and having the conversation. We used to go hang out. Like you would go on little, like all your mates were offering chiropractors. I remember being down on down south with other chiropractors when I was a student, and you're just sitting around fire chatting about not philosophy, but like chiropractic ideas, and you're never more revved up. I did a communication on Thursday night. We talked about literally this, like, what is your pitch for chiropractic? And it's not about what's right, what's wrong. It's like, if someone walks up to you at a party, how do you describe it? And that was great. And then everyone left. And then there was me, shout out to Matt Hamilton and Miles Upfold over in WA, sat there for probably 90 minutes, just having the best discussions and chats, knowing full well I needed to get Miles home and into bed, because it's a joy to be in those conversations. So I think you're right. In terms of trying to sell philosophy, that's not it. Like, that's where understanding your niche, understanding who you help, your marketing, all that is over here. But all that stems as a secondary from understanding who you are and what the core entity that exudes from you is. And I think there's been too much of us trying to take other people's, or feel like we have to fit into some kind of thing where it's just like, I really vibe with the idea that the body is self-healing. I really vibe with the idea that if I provide it the support, it does what it needs to do. I think that's a very defensible place to be. And then how I express that is me beyond that.
I like what you just said then. Sorry.
Okay.
Where you said trying to get someone else's philosophy. That's nice. You did. That was a nice little wrap up. But anyway, Aaron, go for it. The chug.
Oh, the chug.
No,
I wish that was
no one wishes
that was unmuted. I was going to say you hit on the word that I've been sitting on for this whole time here, because I'm not going to chime in too much here, man. I don't know. But the expression of what I'm sensing is that there's this body of identity defining work. And then I think where it gets confused from a marketing standpoint, because I don't see them as two separate things. I see them as very interrelated. It's the application and the expression of that identity into a people group that matters to me. I don't want to work with, and I did work with weight loss people. Then I went into kind of older people, rehabilitative after massive injuries, and it's not for me. Had I worked with sprinters, different story. I'd probably still be a trainer of some sort, because that's something that I'm super passionate about. Would do it for 7 days a week. Still follow the sport now. I'm freaking 120 kgs. Couldn't run down my 10-year-old son, right? But I'm very passionate about the track and field. And so had I had a skill set that would apply to that specific people group, I think that would 100% boost the application of that philosophy. And so I don't know if it has a direct correlation. I would say that Angus is arguing yes. I think if you market to the wrong demographic, it's going to screw up your practice and you are going to feel burnt out 100%. And so this is why personal brand matters. And so I think philosophy, personal branding, they do matter, but it's the expression and the application of that.
So
that's my 2 cents.
I always think, I think that's a really
worth.
great way to put it. But I almost think, like, in some ways, the philosophy is the stuff outside of the brand. Like, I know it's part of my brand, but like my philosophy is I like playing paddle tennis. I will stay up late tonight, even though I shouldn't, to watch the ninth stage of the Giro d'Italia, even though I don't ride a bike at all. I just froth cycling for some reason, right? My kids, all these other random things that we do is part of our philosophy and how we express it. And I think it is marketing in a sense, because it's often what people buy is less about your practice and more about you, as we well know. I mean, I can tell you right now that Aaron's philosophy is that you guys should work fucking full time. he's a man that believes in working a full time for a good wage. Like you said, these are the things we know about each other, and I just think you can't take someone else's philosophy, but we need to stop looking at it as there's core tenets of chiropractic as a philosophy driven thing, but how you identify and what that means is completely up for interpretation. And that's, like you said, I think you hit on the nail on the head there, Angus, where it's just like, if you try and be someone else's, you're going to have a terrible time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think context again, man. Context is everything, right? Like, it's the alignment, it's the congruence, what you were talking about. So context is everything, and this is going back to how we started this whole thing. You're trying to apply principles that have no context to the thing that you're trying to build. So regardless if it's philosophy, regardless if it's business advice, if it's marketing advice, if you're building something that you don't want to build, your LTV is going to be impacted because your service will be impacted, your deliverability will be impacted, the way you operate and where you operate from and why you operate, all of that's going to be impacted because you're taking somebody else's thing and you're trying to download it into your business, and there's a misalignment and there's incongruence, and that upsets you at an identity level, and there's no way that you're going to be able to get any overflow, any surplus. It's just not going to happen.
That was a nice little wrap up. I was just about to do that. Also, for the guys that love arguing with each other online, that's how you have a civilized conversation about philosophy. You don't have to call each other a dickhead all the time. So yeah, no, that was a good wrap up, Aaron. The whole idea of bringing that into the conversation was more so to say, look, again, different models, different philosophies live inside of each of the different models. And if you don't understand your model or your philosophy and you try and apply someone else's thing to your thing, there's probably a chance that you're going to lose, a high probability in that instance. So the takeaways from today are, well, number one, just the advice of just increasing your lifetime value is correct, but it again is not contextual because there's all these other layers: ethics, philosophy, demographics, who's around you, all of these things. So just trying to blindly take that advice and apply it to your thing is probably why you're still listening to this podcast right now. The first thing you need to do is work out what your lifetime value is. You don't need to increase or decrease it. You just need to know what it is. So then you can start to play the right game to market and grow that model. So working out your lifetime value, as we spoke about last week, is working out what you initially sell. So in terms of, if you sat down with someone and they started care, what do you 100% expect them to complete? If that's 10 visits, 12, 2, whatever, times that by your visit cost plus your new patient exam, that gives you your lifetime value. That then goes back to the core 4 metrics that tells you how you can market this thing, which might mean you don't get to outsource Facebook advertising to a digital agency. You might have to do that yourself. No shame on that. It's just a different model, different way of playing the same game. So that's the wrap up. Nath, you got something on your mind? You want to?
No, mate, I'm just contemplating the bigness of the universe.
Yeah, you look like you were going to sign off on it. Anyway, that'll do. We'll wrap it up there.
I think he's actually contemplating calling you.
He's just
dick.
logging into his burner account on Instagram just to start ripping.
They're actually they're all...
Not Nathan.
I am the reincarnation of BJ Palmer.
Dude's just sitting on his burner Instagram, like firing off comments to his own practice. You quack. He's like, this will get him.
Perfect. All right, we'll leave it at that. Thanks again, boys.